Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily cover Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. So recently we talked about the new classes in War of Immortals, the new Paizo book out as of the posting of this video. So today I thought we'd tackle the class archetypes. So before we get started, a quick review of how class archetypes work, because they have a kind of misleading name. Class archetypes are special things that change how a class works at level 1. In return, at level 2, a player doesn't get their normal level 2 class feat and instead must take the dedication feat for their specifically selected class archetype. From that point on, class archetypes act just like normal archetypes. That is to say, players can choose to trade in class feats for archetype feats as they see fit. Once again, the way they work is that they change how the class works at level 1, then you must take the dedication feat for the class archetype at level 2, and then they work as normal archetypes from then on. So there are 5 new class archetypes in the War of Immortals book. Now, some class archetypes can apply to multiple classes, but all of the ones in this book only apply to a single class. Avenger is the class archetype for rogues and is the spiritual successor for the Slayer class from Pathfinder 1st edition. And I do mean spiritual because the Avenger is a religious rogue, maybe like an assassin for a church or a dungeon delver trying to find lost holy relics for their god. The Avenger class archetype changes up the rogue in the following ways. Firstly, Avengers must choose a deity and follow them. Interestingly, it doesn't specifically mention edicts and anathemas, so maybe you have to follow your deity's rules, I don't know. Instead of the standard rogue starting skill proficiencies, Avengers start off trained in Intimidation, Religion, Stealth, and your deity's favored skill, and 3 others of your choice plus more for high intelligence. That's 7 total starting skills to a rogue's normal 9, and 4 are chosen for you instead of the standard rogue's 2. Many may balk at this, but personally I don't think it's too much of a big deal. In addition, Avengers lose the surprise attack class feature. That's the one where if rogues beat an enemy in initiative on the first round of combat in some situations, that enemy is considered off guard. Avengers make up for this by getting a Ranger's Hunt Prey feature. They don't get the Ranger subclass, so no flurry or anything, but they do get the bonus to perception checks and stuff. Also, Avengers must take the Avenger Rogues Racket. Recall that Racket is the name for the Rogue subclass. Now, it doesn't technically say that you need to be an Avenger to take the Avenger Racket, but it's highly implied. The big Avenger Racket ability requires you to hunt prey, which you get from the class archetype, so let's assume for now that only Avenger class archetypes can get the Avenger Racket. Speaking of hunt prey, some of you may be asking, why do Avengers get hunt prey? Well, if an Avenger hits an off-guard enemy that is also the subject of their hunt prey with their deity's favorite weapon, they can get sneak attack with it, regardless of what that weapon is. That's right, your Avenger of Angrad can sneak attack with a Great Axe now. Now, the book just says that you can always sneak attack with your deity's favorite weapon, but some Day 1 errata came out saying that no, the enemy also has to be the subject of your hunt prey. Not quite as good, but still pretty good. Avengers are also trained and gain access to your deity's favorite weapon, and their weapon proficiency with that weapon increases as their martial weapon proficiency increases. Oh, they also get conditional critical specialization with that weapon. Additionally, Avengers also become trained in medium armor, and that proficiency increases as their training with light armor increases. Lastly, the Racket allows Avengers to choose the key ability score of Strength or Dexterity. Compared to all of that, the dedication feat is kind of a letdown, but remember, Avengers must take it at level 2. It gives you a +1 to saves against divine spells, effects that do spirit damage, and they can also gather information, coerce, and track with the religion skill instead of the normal skill, as long as there is a prominent church to their deity in the area where they are. You see, you ask your congregation for help. That's the basics of the Avenger Rogue. They have access to a bunch of other feats that are pretty cool, like Slay, which can outright kill doomed targets. I like Haft Striker Stance, which lets you treat certain weapons like polearms as 2 weapons, the business end and the haft. It's not the strongest option in the world, but it kind of reminds me of like the old double weapons from Pathfinder 1st edition, and I liked those. Also, please note all of these feats were published in other books but are also options for the Avenger to take. I like the Avenger. They could be terrifyingly effective, especially sneak attacking with a great axe or a bastard sword. Plus, with all the 2-weapon fighting options, they could make really great red mantis assassins. Plus, all that training in medium armor could make them decent frontliners. They are a bit less skilled than a normal rogue, and I feel like the wording of the archetype could have been cleaned up a bit to make it more obvious what's going on. Like, maybe including that they need to follow the edicts and anathemas explicitly, but otherwise pretty solid. Good, solid rogue option. They definitely favor some deities over others, like an Angrad Avenger with a great axe is going to get more use out of this archetype than like an Avenger of Pharasma whose favored weapon is a dagger. One minor point of contention is that they don't get divine spellcasting. This ironically means that an Eldritch Trickster rogue who chooses cleric dedication or the like is a more religious character than an Avenger. Maybe. Your opinion may vary. Next up is the Blood Rager, which is an update of the Pathfinder 1st Edition Blood Rager. Blood Ragers are a barbarian archetype that can cast some spells on the side. Unlike 1st edition, they do this by drinking the blood of their enemies. This could be either really cool or a complete turnoff to some players, so make sure your group is cool before you play one. Compared with the Avenger, the base modifiers of the Blood Rager are pretty tame. Their starting skill proficiencies are Athletics, Medicine, and NE2, plus more for high intelligence. And they must also take the Blood Rager Instinct. Instinct is the name of the Barbarian subclass, if you recall. Again, like the Avenger, the subclass doesn't say that you have to take the archetype to gain access, but let's assume that you do. The Blood Rager Instinct increases the damage you do from rage equal to half your rage damage, but this extra damage comes from bleed, so not all enemies will be affected. Also, they get to add their rage bonus damage to spell attacks, and we'll see how that works next. Anyway, as they gain levels, the damage from their rage goes from 2 to 4 to 8, and at level 9 they gain resistance to slashing damage and persistent bleed damage, as well as resistance to all damage from creatures if they drink that creature's blood through the Harvest Blood ability. So yeah, all the stuff about drinking blood. At level 2, when the Blood Rager takes Blood Rager Dedication, they gain spellcasting. They gain the ability to cast spells from either the Arcane or Divine lists, as well as the Arcane or Religion skill, respectively. They make the choice at level 2 and cannot change it. They also get 2 cantrips that they can cast, though one has to be a spell that requires an attack roll. Their spellcasting attribute is Charisma, and importantly, all of their spells gain the Rage trait if they are raging. Normally, a barbarian cannot cast spells while raging, but this circumvents that rule. However, every time they cast a spell, their drained condition increases by 1, regardless if they are raging or not. This can be mitigated with the Harvest Blood action. So this single action activity requires your last action to be a successful piercing or slashing melee strike against a creature that is not immune to bleed. The effect is you consume blood lingering on your weapon and reduce your drained condition by 1. You also gain some temporary HP and a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws against that creature's spells. I have thoughts about this. Further archetype feats let Blood Ragers cast more powerful spells or gain temporary access to new spells based on the creature whose blood they drink. They can even recover spell slots by drinking blood, which is wild, though it's not great to do in battle. So I like the Blood Rager in concept. It's very flavorful, and the ability to rage and still cast spells could be very powerful. Imagine a barbarian that can self-heal or self-haste or self-heroism. That's pretty good. I mean, there's something to be said for the class with the most hit points having access to some spells. But, and again I realize this will be an unpopular opinion, I think there are too many loopholes and it's ripe for exploitation. My main issue here is that they can get rid of any drained condition, not just the one from spellcasting by harvesting blood. In other words, as long as there's a squirrel or a rabbit after the battle, they can just hunt down the animal, drink its blood, and get rid of any draining effect, including draining effects from, like, vampires and such. Heck, if you have some solid healing in your party, the Blood Rager could nick a party member, drink their blood, and recover from the drained condition, and recover some spell slots too, as long as you have a few minutes of downtime. And then the bard or witch or whatever could heal up the nicked party member with a focus ability. Heck, rules as written, the Blood Rager could strike themselves and drink their own blood and gain all of these benefits. I don't think some of you recognize how powerful this is. Normally, you can only get rid of Drained with a rank 4 sound body spell or higher, and then there's only a chance to get rid of it. You have to roll to counteract to get rid of this Drained. The Blood Rager can just do it automatically, no roll, at level 1, and also recover several of their spell slots with a feat. It's a cool concept, but the way it's presented, it's ripe for exploitation. I just think that there needs to be some more guardrails on the class to prevent players from just going nuts with it. Also, the archetype as a whole is just kinda all or nothing. Against common folk, it's super good. Against an army of zombies, it's kinda the weakest of the barbarians because zombies don't bleed. Also, some people are disappointed that the primal and occult magics aren't an option for Blood Rager. I get the sentiment, but personally I'm okay with the choices. Lastly, elephant in the room. Some people are not cool with blood and the idea of blood drinking, and this class archetype could really be triggering for some people. Maybe talk it out with the group before playing one. The next archetype is Seneschal. If you're wondering what a Seneschal is, they are stewards of a land in place of an absent ruler, kind of like Denethor from Lord of the Rings. So why is this a witch archetype? Well, a Seneschal is a steward of their patron's power because their patron is missing or dead. That's a fun idea, and I like it. A witch's patron is gone, and the witch is just kind of loosely tied to some nebulous power that used to be their patron's. As a player levels up with Seneschal, they gradually take over the position of their patron and eventually are able to lend out their power to others. Seneschal changes the witch in the following ways. Starting off, Seneschals lose whatever hex they would normally start with and gain a new hex called Manifest Will, which does a bunch of different things depending on the patron's spellcasting tradition. I'll put it up on screen for you to read. The long and the short of it is the Seneschal grants an aura that helps people out. The dedication gives the Seneschal the Witch's Charge feat, which is normally a 6th level feat at 2nd level. I'll put it on screen now so you can read it, but basically the feat lets you designate someone as a charge. Essentially at the start of the day, you get to be a mini-patron to someone else. Know where the person is, cast touch spells on them if they're within 30 feet, that sort of thing. The Seneschal version of this does not let you do it to your familiar, meaning you have to basically become a mini-patron to someone else, which is a cool idea. Further Seneschal feats let you cast more spells through your charge and make it look like they are casting the spell, which would be a fun deception. Watcher on the Wall gives you a clairvoyance clairaudience effect, and eventually a Seneschal is able to grant spells to your charge like a real patron. Pretty fun. I really like the Seneschal for flavor reasons. Being able to grant spells to your other party members, make them look like they are casting spells, or put a permanent spy device on a wall is fantastic. Plus, just the base dedication could let a divine or a primal witch cast a 2-action spell and then 1-action heal the barbarian friend from 30 feet away. Pretty good. I can really see this class archetype being useful in like a spy-based campaign. Now, there isn't a whole lot of raw power here. This archetype isn't going to break the game, but it could be super flavorful. Plus, the story options are just fun. Lots of cool flavors that you could go with this archetype. Vindicator is the spiritual successor to the Pathfinder 1st Edition Inquisitor, though it is fairly different. They are a Ranger archetype, and like Avenger and Blood Rager, they come with their own subclass or Hunter's Edge. The base adjustments are that a Vindicator is trained in religion instead of nature and trained in their deity's favored weapon, and their proficiency with that weapon goes up with their martial weapon proficiency. Also, if their deity's favorite weapon is a simple weapon that does a d6 or lower, bump that damage up 1 die size. Same with unarmed attacks. Also, Vindicators have to take the Vindication Ranger subclass, the Vindication Edge, and all of their Warden spells, which is the name of the Ranger focus spells, count as divine, not primal. The Vindication Edge gives a Vindicator a +1 status bonus to hit their hunted prey with spells, and their hunted prey suffers a -1 to saves against their spells. They also gain a Warden spell called Vindicator's Mark. We'll talk about that in a sec, but real quickly, at level 5, a Vindicator can choose Trackless Journey to apply to urban environments, and at level 17, the bonus to hunt prey goes to +2 and -2 to saves against their spells. So a Vindicator can do pretty well with their spells even at higher levels. Maybe not as good as a fully spec'd wizard, but still pretty good. So Vindicator's Mark is an interesting focus spell. On a hit, it does 2d4 spirit damage, which scales up as you gain levels, but that's really not the big deal. If you hit, all of your weapon or unarmed attacks against that target do additional damage, which also scales up as you gain levels. Also, after hitting with a weapon or unarmed attack, you can, as a free action, dismiss this spell to do additional damage. Also, when the mark is up, you can track the enemy easily, and invisible enemies are only concealed to you. That could be really useful against certain enemies like Fades, previously known as invisible stalkers, and other invisible creatures. The dedication feat kinda does what the Avenger feat does, lets you coerce, gather information, or make an impression, or make a request with religion, so long as you're in a town with a church to your deity. As for additional feats later on, the Vindicator can get a nice variety of feats, including some feats from Investigators and Thaumaturges, so that's cool. They can also pick up some more Warden spells, and even a second unique Warden spell. Now, if any of you heard all of that and thought that that was kinda just fine and not groundbreaking, you aren't alone. There are some tips and tricks I've heard of about making a Vindicator good, especially by using it to qualify for other archetypes early on, but I'd like to draw your attention to the 8th level feat, Disrupt Opposed Magic. This reaction lets you hit someone who tries to cast a spell with your deity's favored weapon. If you succeed, you shut down their spell. Not critical succeed, just succeed. They don't even have to be the subject of your hunt prey, and you can do this at range. This is crazy good, and I will talk about it in a second. For the most part, I'm okay with the Vindicator. They kinda do what they're supposed to. They hunt down enemies of the church, and with their Warden spell, Vindicator's Mark, they can do this very well. They can get a lot of fun utility feats, so again, not a lot of power, but a lot of utility, and they could be super fun flavor-wise. If you're in the kind of campaign that cares about sheer damage output, maybe skip this one, but they could be great in like a political intrigue campaign. I would have liked to have seen some feats that would have given them cleric spellcasting similar to cleric dedication. That would have been nice, as the original Inquisitor had some limited spellcasting, but other than that, it's flavorful and fine. Except for Disrupt Opposed Magic. This is crazy. A ranged reactive strike that turns off spells on a hit, not crit. That one ability catapults Vindicator, in my opinion, from mid-level to extremely powerful, possibly even game-disrupting. I see this ability, and as a GM I suddenly realize that from now on there's a chance that the Vindicator can just turn any fight against a big bad spellcaster into a joke. Party fighting a Lich? Well, the Vindicator of Aristil rolls well, and the Lich is not going to get any of their spells off. Compare this to, say, the Fighter's Disruptive Stance. The Vindicator feat is 2 levels earlier, does not require the Vindicator to enter a stance, and, oh yeah, can be done from 100 feet away. And if you don't think that's a bit too powerful, ask yourself how you would feel as a wizard if an enemy just shot you every time you tried to cast a spell and wasted 2 of your 3 actions from 100 feet away. Because yes, if a player can have this ability, it's fair use for enemies to get it too. I think Disrupt Opposed Magic needs to be reined in or something. It just shuts down too many fights. Imagine the big bad Lich at the end of your campaign sitting atop his tower, raining death on the party while his minions keep the fighter from reaching him. And then the Vindicator just shoots the Lich repeatedly from across the battlefield and he never gets a spell off. That's not fun for anyone, the other players or the GM alike. I'm not saying it needs to be banned or anything, but a few more guardrails would be nice. The final class archetype is for the fighter, and it's called Warrior of Legend. It's meant to be evocative of heroes like Achilles or Samson, warriors who are super awesome but with a fatal weakness. The class archetype takes away a fighter's heavy armor training and the shield block feat. Important note, they can still have a shield, they just don't have the shield block feat for free. But the class archetype does give them both acrobatics and athletics instead of one or the other. They also gain the Die Hard feat for free, and at level 5 they become Master, then eventually Legendary in both Spears and Polearms, but it's just those 2 weapon categories, they do not get a choice. But the big thing about them is that they are prophesized to die. They have a weakness to a damage type equal to half their level, either bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing, your choice at character creation. As if that wasn't enough, they become doomed to whenever they get hit with their special damage weakness. Note that this value does not increase. Subsequent hits keep you at doomed 2 unless another creature does something else to increase your doomed value. As a reminder, doomed reduces when you would die from a dying value. So with Die Hard, if you go down from your weakness, you would die at dying 3. The dedication feat at level 2 gives spears and polearms you wield the parry trait conditionally, and also makes you do extra damage with spears and polearms equal to your doomed value. Further feats allow you to gain temporary hit points when you become doomed, or to actually reduce any doomed condition if you hit an enemy with a melee attack. There are further feats to mitigate the doomed condition and eventually to give you resistance to weaponed and unarmed attacks that are not your special weakness. There's even a stance that essentially lets you reactive strike if someone hits you and gives you an extra reaction for that extra attack every round. So, Warrior of Legend is going to be real hit and miss for some people. The upside, the high bonus to hit of a fighter, and the additional damage if your character is doomed can make for a lot of extra damage added up over a fight. If you have a healer in your party that's really on top of things, this could be great, but yeah, doomed is a pretty bad condition, especially if you're crit and go down while you're doomed too. You may only be one roll away from being dead. For those that like to live life on the edge and are willing to take penalties for every last +1 to hit and damage, and there are those kind of players out there, I've seen them, then this is the archetype for you. If you want to gamble on having some extra power and never being hit with a club, then yeah, go for it. For some people who want to mitigate risk as much as possible, then this archetype is terrible and a complete non-starter. Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are 2 generic fighter feats at the end of the Warrior of Legend dissection. These aren't Warrior of Legend specific, any fighter can get them, and both are pretty cool. I have a friend who always wants to play a Final Fantasy style Dragoon, so these are right up his alley. So that's it for the class archetypes of War of Immortals. Like with Exemplar, I understand that some of you may take issue with what I have said about a few of the class archetypes. I know. Please keep in mind I'm just using my years of Pathfinder experience to make an educated stab at what is likely to happen. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And while you're down there, make sure you like and subscribe. That lets me, as well as YouTube, know you like this kind of content and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming!